Hello, hello. Greetings. I don't know where you are in the world, but I am so glad that you are tuned in with yours truly tonight. I am Nina Turner, and I have the awesome pleasure to have Saru. And Saru, I try never to butcher your last name. You know, I never say your last name, but I have Saru, and she academic extraordinaire, activist extraordinaire, just out there doing the thing. But she leads an organization. It is One Fair Wage. If you have never heard of One Fair Wage, baby, hold on to your seatbelts because you're going to know about One Fair Wage tonight. And under her leadership, and it takes teamwork to make the dream work, but under her leadership, One Fair Wage is making it happen all over this country. The goal of One Fair Wage is to do away with the sub minimum wage, which it has remnants in anti-blackness. And I'm not going to steal Saru's thunder. Madam President, CEO, academic, activist extraordinaire, I am so happy to have you here
Oh,
with
I'm
us
so honored
today.
to be with you and your extraordinariness as well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. So tell us a little bit about those who have joined us, more about One Fair Wage. And my first question for you today is, what the heck is a sub minimum wage?
Yeah, exactly. Because the word minimum in the dictionary means you don't earn anything less than that. But unfortunately, we have a long history of structural racism in this country that has created wages less than the minimum so that people who've historically been seen as less than human, subhuman, have gotten a sub minimum wage. So in the United States of America, we still have a federal sub minimum wage for tipped workers that is still just $2.13 an hour at the federal level. It was created after emancipation to allow restaurant owners to hire newly freed Black people, not pay them an actual wage, and allow them to live exclusively on just tips. This had never happened before in the US or anywhere. It was a unique creation of the United States after slavery, and it was a way to allow the hospitality industry to essentially continue to access free Black labor.
Now, Madam President, I need you to stop right there
Okay.
because some things bear repeating because people don't, they're not going to believe that. They are not going to believe what you are saying. And I want to add some history to this just a little bit. And I want you to tell that story all over again because I want y'all, sisters and brothers and family friends, you heard her right. A point about Reconstruction. You know, the feds pulled out. That the compromise of 1877 was over a presidential election. I will put the whole history in a parking lot, but I need folks to go ahead and go on and look that up. Don't just Google it, go deep. Or you can Google it, make sure your sources are good. But I need you to go deep on that. And so, Madam President, what you are talking about is very much rooted in the fact that the federal government failed Black free people when they pulled out of the South after Reconstruction just abruptly ended, mind you, but in 1877, and they allowed business as usual. In other words, they allowed the segregationalists, the slave owning class to be re-empowered in the South, and they left Black people purely vulnerable. And none of the amendments, none of that stuff mattered because the federal troops went away and it was slavery by another name. They just didn't call it slavery. So I want people to think about sharecropping, you know, debt peonage, those kinds of things. But lo and behold, this in the restaurant industry or the hospitality industry, which a lot of people understand sharecropping, they understand debt peonage and those kinds of things, but Madam President, they don't understand what you just said to us. So please repeat that again. And I want y'all to know the federal government allowed this to happen. And guess what? We in the 21st century still talking about it. But go ahead on, Madam President,
And
please.
and sadly, it wasn't just in the South. So after the, yes, there were northern states that opposed slavery and southern states that were for slavery, but they were united in their desire to let businesses essentially continue accessing free Black labor, which I don't know what else you call that. There's chattel slavery, and then there's free labor, free Black labor. And that's what happened after Reconstruction as Black workers, yes, were emancipated, but then the only places they could get hired besides as sharecroppers, were in hospitality jobs where they were told you are not going to get a wage. And that wasn't just the South. It was Chicago, it was New York, it was Boston. You are not going to get a wage. You are going to live on this thing that has just come from Europe called tips, which was never before how tips were used. They were never used as a replacement for wages. Prior to emancipation, tips were always an extra or bonus on top of a wage. They mutated tipping in the United States to allow businesses all over the country to continue to access free Black labor and say, I'm not going to pay you. The customers are going to pay you in tips. And that became law. So when you say the federal government pulled out, it wasn't just a we're not going to touch this. It was an intentional exclusion of these Black workers and Black women in particular. In 1938, when the New Deal was passed and America got the first federal minimum wage bill in the United States, Black women were excluded and told, you don't get any minimum wage. You get zero because you live on tips. And we went from $0 in 1938 all the way to $2.13 an hour, a $2 increase over now almost 90 years since the New Deal was passed. 90 years, a $2 increase. Why? Because these are still to this day overwhelmingly women, highest rates of single mothers, highest rates of sexual harassment of any industry, because you've got mostly single moms, women of color working in very casual restaurants and bars, struggling with the highest rates of both poverty and sexual harassment of any industry. And it's $2 at the federal level, but 43 states persist with this legacy of slavery. And 4 out of 5 states in the US have a wage for tipped workers, a sub-minimum wage that is $5 or less. And it causes extreme suffering and has for generations.
No, I feel you. My little history moment was just about the Reconstruction part of it, but I'm feeling everything that you're saying. I mean, Minister Malcolm X once said anything south of Canada is south. So, hey, that's your message tonight when it comes to the sub minimum wage.
That's
so
right.
I'm with you. I mean,
That's right.
that's just what it is.
Yes.
And because it impacted disproportionately, was deliberately. Let's not play games here, Madam President. That's what I love about you. And we're gonna talk about people of color, but as we are telling this particular story, let's go ahead and talk about how the genesis happened. This was about Black people. Yes. It was about Black women in particular. Right. Now, as we talk about it through a 21st century lens, it is certainly predominantly women. It is women of color, and it's other, poor white women are in it too.
That's right.
But the genesis, let me let y'all understand, genesis meaning beginning of this was about Black women not having agency and the powers that be all across this country really not giving a damn.
That's right.
I know that Madam President, some people don't want to hear that, but we're gonna tell the truth tonight. They didn't care because it was Black women. And Black people were expendable. And when you mess over Black women, that means you're messing over their whole family, their community. So the Black men in their lives get messed up behind this, and the Black children in their lives get messed up behind this. And then Black communities are allowed to languish. This was deliberate. It wasn't by accident. And so, Madam President, can we talk about how, since this was done deliberately, there's a way to undo this deliberately too. Let's talk about that.
That's right. And by the way, I do have to say something that it's the perfect example of how when you deliberately exclude Black women, you end up hurting everybody, because 1 in 2 Americans now works in the restaurant industry. Half of America starts their job life career in the restaurant industry in high school, college, or graduate school.
I did.
Everybody, white workers, white men, go through this rite of torture.
Yeah.
Of being paid $2 or $3 or $4 depending on the state you're in, all because we allowed the exclusion, the intentional exclusion of Black women. Now everybody gets paid this. And the National Restaurant Association, to this day, from 1919 when it was founded to this day, has fought to maintain this sub-minimum wage. What's so exciting, in response to your question, what's so exciting is that for the first time since emancipation, post-pandemic, we are seeing a mass rejection of this sub-minimum wage. 1.2 million workers have walked off the job in the restaurant industry, refusing to work for sub-minimum wages. And we are hearing them say things like, this is not a great resignation. This is a great revolution. I know what I'm worth for the first time. I know I'm worth more than $2, and I refuse to go back for anything less than one fair wage. And as a result, we're winning.
There it is. Listen, sisters and brother, family, friends, if you are just tuning in, it is yours truly, Nina Turner, Sister Senator Nina Turner, and I am here with the one and only president of One Fair Wage, Saru. She is an academic, she's an activist, she is taking it to the streets the way it needs to be taken to the streets. And this is a ministry to try to undo the sub minimum wage that was created deliberately and reinforced by not just the federal government, but all levels of government during practice and de jure and de facto. I think they use those terms in your legal profession. Yeah, yeah. In fact and in practice, this was
That's right.
happening all over the United States of America, still happening today. We Are Somebody is working to bridge the gap between unionized workers and non-unionized workers. We want you to know that whether or not you are in a union, working class people and working class people's issues have to be addressed, have to be lifted up. If you do not have a sugar daddy or sugar mama or sugar somebody, you are among the working class. And some of us may be blessed to be at the top of the working class, some may be in the middle, and some are at the bottom. But baby, make no mistake about it. If you have to work for a living, in other words, you couldn't sit it out a year or two. Some people couldn't even sit it out for a month. Baby, you are part of the working class. And here we are, we bringing this thing together. So, Madam President, so we want to talk about ways in which, so we understand what the problems are. You have laid out the history. You've been traveling all over this country, telling this story. People can go to is it onefairwage.org?
Yes. Yeah.
Onefairwage.org. Y'all can get some more information about this. So now we set the table for folks. So historically, they understand that this was on purpose. It wasn't by accident. And because it persisted, as you laid out, when you do Black women wrong, everybody else get caught up in the net. Understand this, that there is a way for us to undo this, and you are working very hard to do it. Talk to us about ways that people can get involved with One Fair Wage, ballot initiatives all over the country.
Yeah.
We got a ballot initiative coming up right here in the great state of Ohio. I am proud to be on that little local regional board we got,
Yes.
and in the trenches with you all the way. But how
Yes.
can we undo this? And can you talk to folks about what the restaurant industry, they're going to say, oh, the hamburger is going to go up, or we can't afford it, or we're going to go out of business. Can you refute some of that stuff as well?
Yeah. Well, as I said, super exciting moment. We're winning. We won in DC last year. We just won in Chicago. We won One Fair Wage. It was so historic. We won Chicago October 6th. And now there are bills and ballot measures, as you said, moving in 13 states across the country: Illinois, Ohio, Arizona, Michigan, New York, Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts, California. All over the country, there are bills and ballot measures moving. You can go to our website and see if we're in one of your states. And if we're not, we're happy to work with you to start a campaign in your state, because everybody deserves a full living wage, one fair wage with tips on top. Now, the restaurant industry, as you said, in response to our campaign saying everybody deserves a full living wage, is saying, oh, we couldn't possibly do that. We couldn't pay people a minimum wage. The minimum wage we can't pay because we'll go out of business and tips will go away and jobs will be lost. And in fact, the 7 states that have already done this, California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Minnesota, Montana, and Alaska, all require full minimum wage with tips on top. Guess what? They have higher restaurant sales, higher restaurant job growth rates, higher small business restaurant growth rates, and higher rates of tipping. And maybe most importantly for women and women of color, they have 1/2 the rate of sexual harassment in the restaurant industry, because it turns out when you pay a woman a full minimum wage, she doesn't have to depend entirely on tips. She gets tips. In fact, her tips are better, but she's not entirely dependent on tips. And so she doesn't have to put up with as much from customers.
And the point about relying on tips, to kind of round the circle out, sometimes I don't think most people understand the importance of tips. It shouldn't be a necessity, but it really, really is. And so I just want to remind folks who get a chance to go out to eat to please tip the people who are providing, who serve you your meal. But Saru, a lot of people don't know that it's, they kind of figure, well, I'm paying the bill. I paid for my meal. Why do I have to tip? And it puts an extra burden on the customer, direct burden on the customer, instead of the indirect burden, which is to make sure that these workers are paid a
That's right.
minimum wage. It's hard work too.
That's right. And I think what most customers don't understand, most of us think when we tip, it's on top of a wage, it's
That's right.
extra or a bonus or a job well done. In fact, in most states, 43 states, every time you tip, it allows the employer to pay the worker less than the minimum wage. It counts against the worker's wage. The employer's taking that money and using it to pay the minimum wage. And so we need a full minimum wage everywhere so that when you tip with your hard earned money, that's an extra or a bonus. It's not going to a multi-billion-dollar restaurant corporation that's using it to cover its workers' wages. You know, we subsidize this industry in three ways. We are paying the workers' wages with our tips. We are covering these workers' survival with $16.9 billion annually in taxpayer funded public assistance, because even with tips, these workers can't survive. They're on food stamps, they're using Medicaid. And every day we go out and we subsidize these workers' wages with our tips. So, and we're subsidizing this huge, very profitable industry, when really these workers could be paid a wage and our tips should be on top of that.
That's right. And listen, if these restaurants can't afford to pay a minimum wage, they shouldn't be in business.
That's right.
Period. And I'm
That's
not the first one to say it. Other people have said it, and there's been even historic figures who have said that as well. So come on, y'all. Don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe, courtesy of Beverly Hills Cop. Uh, Eddie Murphy. I'm sorry, I digress there, y'all. I just had to bring a little levity to this. But don't fall for the okey doke. Let me use the technical term. Don't let the restaurant industry lull you into believing that what they're doing is okay. It's not okay. It hasn't been okay. It wasn't okay when they first started doing it. And the fact that we have this knowledge, it's not okay now. It's especially not okay now, because you know what? When you know better, you ought to do better. That is the point here. So, sir, you were saying all the states, about, is it 11 states where there'll be initiative on the ballot
13,
next year?
13
13
states,
states.
bills and ballot measures. Yes.
Bills and ballot measures. Again, if you don't live in one, go to We Are Somebody. Yes, go to wearesomebody.org. But I want you to go to onefairwage.org and get involved. You do not have to live in those states to be involved. All right. The world is a whole lot smaller now. All you got to do is be able to have a little internet, little smartphone, and you can get involved. Hopefully, we're coming to a state near you, because we got to shake this thing up. And don't hesitate to reach out to your leaders on the federal level, because
That's
this
right.
is an absolute disgrace. But you know what, Saru, let's dip into here. What else is a disgrace is the fact that the minimum wage, I mean, hell, we talk about the sub minimum wage,
Yeah,
the minimum wage itself,
that's right.
14 years, $7.25.
That's right. I mean, if you go to the MIT living wage calculator, it will tell you the minimum you need to live to cover the basic cost of living. And right now, the cheapest county in the United States is McClellan County, Texas, where for one person in a two-parent, two-child household, a family of one person is going to need $20 an hour to cover the basic cost of living by 2030. And so we shouldn't be calling anymore for 15 or even 17, because if by 2030, when these, all of these minimum wage bills, they phase in over several years. So
Right.
if we pass a bill next year, it's going to phase in by 2030. We can't be asking for 17 by 2030. The cheapest county in the United States for one person, a two-parent, two-child household needs $20 an hour minimum. And I'm not talking about to go to Disneyland or to buy Christmas gifts. I'm saying just to cover rent, housing, food, transportation. That's
Just to
it.
survive. There was some data that came out, or a poll came out. It's probably, I don't know if it's quite a month old yet, but I think it was like 38% or so of Americans say that they're sacrificing meals to be able to pay their housing costs.
That's right. People cannot afford to live. And there's two parts of that. We got to make sure housing is affordable, but at the same time, we need to make sure people are earning enough to cover the basic cost of living, to pay for housing, to pay for food. And also, what happens to our economy when more than a third of people cannot consume, cannot buy what they need? Our economy comes to a standstill. I
That's
mean,
right.
there were not so great, very prominent capitalists like Henry Ford, even, who, yes, is very problematic in many ways, but even he said, I need to pay my workers enough to make sure they can afford the cars coming off the assembly line. And
There
we
it
are
is.
in that moment right now. If your hourly wage is $2.13 an hour, that is half the cost of a gallon of gas. That is less than a tray of eggs. That is less than a gallon of milk. $2.13 an hour is not enough to live anywhere in this country at any point, even with tips. And, employers should pay that wage, a livable wage.
It's unconscionable, and we know it. And I'm glad that you're out there and others out there sounding the alarm and making sure that nobody can ever be comfortable with the fact that restaurants get away with paying their workers, their employees, their partners in many ways, $2.13. It is immoral. It is a shame. And it makes me and I told and Brian and the rest of the team knows this, and I'm going to say this right here. Every time folks say, well, we can't afford, because the federal government could have at least increased that minimum wage, but they decided to blame it on the parliamentarian. I put that in the parking lot. So I got to tell you, the parking lot is backed up. My parking lot is backed up. I got a lot in the parking lot right now that I'm gonna have to pull them cars out of that parking lot. But I tell you this: the U.S. Treasury Secretary said that we could afford 2 wars. She was interviewed. The interviewer was asking, how we gonna pay for this stuff. She's like, oh no, we can afford 2 wars. All we need is Congress to act. So
Can't
every
afford
time,
public schools.
come on,
Can't afford housing for immigrants.
come on.
Can't afford, basic infrastructure. Our roads are crumbling. Can't afford to address the climate crisis.
Cancel student debt.
Yeah.
Housing, just regular for everyday American. Can't afford none of that. But she said with a straight face, we can afford 2 wars. So every time them neoliberal types come at us like that, talking about what we can't afford, I am going to quote the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Oh no, baby, we can afford it because we can afford 2 wars.
That's right.
Yeah, we can afford it. So, oh my, any what else do you want folks to know?
I just want everybody to know, because I'm feeling it too. I feel like everybody's going through a moment of heartbreak right now, and it's a heavy time. And I just want people to know that while we go through heartbreak, the only way through this heartbreak is people power. The only way we change things is through people power. And I want people to know we're in a moment of incredible worker power. Workers are organizing in all different kinds of ways, including in the restaurant industry, where they're literally walking off the job and saying, I won't come back without a living wage. And
Yeah.
that is people power. And the more we uplift that and support that and grow that, the more we'll have worker power and people power for everything, to fight the climate crisis, to stop a war, to do what we need, So I want to leave with some hope that when workers are standing up and demanding more, that is the beginning of our ability to not just fight for more for workers, but fight for more for all of us.
For all of us, and all of us are workers, baby. That is us, all of us.
Yes.
So we are somebody is teaming up with One Fair Wage, baby. We are coming in hot. And I'm proud of it. We are somebody is a first of its kind organization. We are a capacity building organization for working class people, both unionized and not unionized. We aim to organize, amplify, and fund worker causes to help people be able to live their greatest greatness through being able to afford to live a good life. It starts with economics. So it was another point I wanted to make when you were saying that basically we're just fighting for people to have the basics, not even to go to Disney World or Disneyland, wherever they want to go with the money. And I want to add to that people should be able to go
That's
to
right.
any damn amusement park
That's
they
right.
want to,
That's right.
when they want to. Why is it that we have been so brainwashed to think that working class people don't deserve paid vacation or family medical leave, or to be able to buy? I always joke and say, damn, I want them to at least be able to afford a certified used car, because at least if the car is certified, it ain't going to break down on you. I mean, I ultimately want you to have a new car, but damn it, you can't even afford a certified used vehicle.
Right.
And we start right there. So I'm saying all that to say that we have to get out of the mindset that working class people should have to grovel for everything.
That's right.
We shouldn't. We
No,
shouldn't have to grovel for
no.
everything. And working class people's lives matter too. So they should be able to take a vacation if they want to
That's
and
right.
tiptoe through the
And
tulip.
spend time with their children and not have to work 3
Yes.
jobs and engage in the democratic process,
Come
which they
on.
can't do because they've got 3 jobs, you know?
That
Yes,
part. Or
thrive.
get a mani or pedi if they
Thriving
want
wages.
to.
That's right.
Yeah, we serious about that. So we certainly believe that when workers win victories, we all win victories because what we have in common is that the overwhelming majority of us, again, even if we are blessed to be at the upper echelons of the working class, we are all part of it. I don't think there's a difference between working class and middle class. It's the same class, baby. We work for a living. And Saru, President Saru, and I want you to get engaged and get involved. Please, if you don't do anything else before the year ends, baby, we got less than 100 days. We want you to go to onefairwage.org, get involved. You don't have to live in any of those cities or states where the ballot initiatives will be rolling strong, baby. You can get involved. You can put something on this. You can. And definitely join We Are Somebody. Go to wearesomebody.org. We're going to get this party started real right. 2024 is not that far away. We got so much work to do, and we need you. Time, talent, and treasure. Oh, Saru, it was such a pleasure to have you here. And we're going to have you back from time to time to give us updates on what is happening on the ground and the victories. Congratulations for what happened in Chi-Town.
I know, so exciting.
It's a beautiful thing, and it is just the beginning. Well, listen,
Yes.
workers are somebody. Saru and I, we're somebody. And together we're all, so and I done jack that all up. Ryan, we're going to pack that thing up. So, workers are somebody. You are somebody. And together we are somebody. Until next time.